That Naturopathic Podcast. TNP.
Hello there.
Hi, and thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Cara Denisio.
And I'm Dr. David Miller, and we hear your frustrations. This show is for you.
This show is for you if you're feeling like your current healthcare strategy is not getting to the root cause or the underlying reasons for your health.
This show is for you if you've been told that you're fine, but you definitely don't feel very well.
This show is for you if you're walking out of your doctor's office with 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 medications without any mention of diet, lifestyle, or a long-term game plan.
This show is for you if you've got several specialists taking care of you, but no one is really putting it all together.
This show is for you if you believe that health should be part of healthcare. These problems have solutions.
We know it.
Our patients know it.
And we want you to know it.
Naturopathic medicine is the solution that you need to know about. Hello, Dr. Dave.
Hi, Dr. Cara.
Just us today.
It is.
Yay.
That is good. What are we going to talk about today? Because a lot of these things have been brewing in our mind lately as clinicians. But it's funny because it sort of encompasses what the whole show was sort of started for. So.
Yeah, when we were thinking of like our slogan for that naturopathic podcast, it was a little bit smart in that it says your health needs a 2ND opinion or a second opinion. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty representative of one of the reasons why we started the show.
Almost the whole reason, I would say. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So today's show is for basically anyone who's not getting better. And we thought we didn't want to specify whether you're seeing someone or not, or you're just like Googling yourself or seeing a conventional medical doctor or whatever. It's just regardless of where you are and who you're seeing, this is for people who just aren't feeling better yet with maybe the results that they're putting in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so that could be many things. I just gave away some of the possible sort of scenarios. What do you think is the most common scenario for people?
I think there's a lot of scenarios. Maybe we hang it there for a minute of the
Sure.
I'm not getting better.
Yeah.
Because, well, you mentioned they might be already seeking care from any variety of health professionals.
Mm-hmm.
They might have been seeking care, or they might just be trying to solve it themselves and gathering information from Google or their girlfriends or a forum. Or they've been through it all. And I think historically that's the patients who've come to us who are often, we are the last step, like the last resort.
Yeah, which I almost wish we were more towards the beginning, not just to be like first in line, like pick me, but more just because we have the biggest sort of scope of perspectives to take, and therefore give away the end here. Kind of, we know when to refer, because we know all the different ways of looking at things. I'm not saying we are the only ones who know. I'm just saying generally our scope is such that we appreciate holistically the problem and the person as good as any.
We see the whole elephant. What's that parable called?
Yeah, the blind man and the elephant.
And the elephant,
Like that. Yeah, so the guy feeling the leg thinks it's like a table chair or something, like a chair of a table, and someone feeling the tail thinks it's a rope.
Yes.
And what are the ears? A fan or something?
Something like that. Yeah.
Well, you get the idea. The whole thing is an elephant, but we all just look at a piece of it and get our own sort of perspective. And yes, we sort of look at the elephant.
The whole elephant. And we talked about this. Sometimes, we say that's the benefit of time, right? We have the time to sit down and assess and look at all the parts of the elephant.
Yeah, it takes time to gather the data.
But it's not just time, though. It's also knowledge of the different parts.
Yeah, I think maybe it just took us longer when we were newer to practice to figure out some of the same stuff. If we'd even figured it out, it might just take longer. Yeah.
And sometimes people are not getting better. They're a lot of people don't feel like they need to get better until they know they need to get better.
Like it has to get pretty bad before they start changing things. Yeah. There's that too. Mm-hmm. I would say we'll give another shout out to the people who maybe are seeing their medical doctor and just not getting better. Because I think that's pretty common. That's another common sort of line maybe of people that you see too. I feel like I see a lot of people who have been to the medical doctor. They do what they can, or they're not particularly fond of the idea of being on like 5, 6, 7 different medications for disparate sort of problems when there might be a red thread between them.
Or perhaps they're told there's no problem, right? And from the conventional as there's no problem.
Yeah,
because everything looks okay.
Your labs look okay, your imaging's okay, or whatever.
Exactly. Everything looks fine. There's no problem. And yet there's a problem.
Yeah, and then there's also that, I'm always afraid to say things about medical profession. I guess I'm getting less afraid. I think their sort of red alert level is just higher than ours, right? Mm-hmm. They're used to probably like more dire sort of acute needs. So maybe our sort of yellow, orange lights go off before their red lights go off or whatever. Do you know what I mean kind of with that?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I think, and that's...
It's not meant to be like demeaning or anything. It's just meant to be like, what's a problem to us becomes a problem earlier with like, we're listening. It's like we're in the car, we're listening to like a little rattle before the wheels fall off.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a different system, right? They're looking for sickness. Right. Yes. Basically, the way they're looking at a lab or the way they're looking for an imaging test or something is they're looking for something, an overt, something they can diagnose, which is, again, not a jab. It's just that's what they're doing. Whereas you might leave, though, and they say, no, everything's fine. And that's not good enough for your health.
And we talked about this with labs.
We've talked about that, yeah.
But I think, you're onto something important when you have to sort of come at it in a couple different ways. So we talked about it with labs, like, if your hemoglobin is 129 or 130, you want it a lot higher than that probably, even though you may be in the normal range or whatever.
Yeah. So we'll talk about accurate assessment, but I think we broke down maybe 6 steps of ways that you might experience this journey and some things that you can think about so that you can be informed in navigating who you're working with, what therapies you're doing, why you're doing them, and how to assess if it's working and how to know when you are getting better. Yeah.
So, it's navigating progress in a way. So it might actually be useful to some young naturopaths too, in terms of like this, because you don't get taught this in school.
No.
Right. This is just sort of
this is the art.
Yeah. And it's a process too, right? It is something we both sort of it's funny, we were doing the whiteboard and it's like, it kind of came together fairly well because we sort of work with that anyway. You learn better when you teach.
Yes. Yeah. It's cool. We have you can't see our whiteboard, but we have a whiteboard of,
give it away.
You're not getting better. So let's go to step 1. The first thing you do when you are not getting better is to make sure you're not building a house on shitty foundations.
Yeah. That's so important. That's why it's first. And that's what they're called, foundations. And, like you're saying, I mean, it's hard to expand. It's hard to expand that much more because I feel like everyone understands to some degree. If you don't do the foundation right, like you said, of a house, then you don't worry about the knobs on the French doors. Mm-hmm. Like they're going to come crashing. That's not what to focus on. So what are we talking about when we're talking about foundations? Do you want to give away some like the basic ones that we talk about?
Yeah. And I mean, we distill it down to NMRX. That's our little acronym. And you see it in many permutations from many different types of health experts who know that you need to address foundations. So whatever way you want to look at it, you need to eat well, nourish.
So this is N. Yeah. So nourish. So yeah, we're talking about eat well. We're talking about eliminate well too, right? That's sort of gets lumped in there. So digestion, assimilation, hydration.
What to eat, what not to eat.
Yeah. And as we often say, like avoiding bad things is more important than tons of broccoli or whatever.
When to eat.
When to eat could be another one. Which maybe someday we'll delve into the circadian rhythm of everything, but that's for another time. This is just basics. Or even maybe the core basic of nourishment would just be hydration. Like how many problems could be fixed with just drinking good water?
Yeah.
And enough of it.
Or less alcohol.
Or that. Less fun, maybe. But
so that's N.
That's N. What's M?
M is movement. Yeah.
And we pick movement because it doesn't sound as bad as exercise, I think.
Yeah.
It can be anything.
And it's more fun. When you think of exercise, it's a bit more prescriptive. But move your body, get out, move your body, and that sets everything up.
Yeah. Dance, do yoga, go for a run.
Get outside.
What's the best exercise, Kara? What is the best kind of movement for you? Well, for anyone, not just you. I don't want to talk. Well, okay, she's going to get racy already.
I don't know what you're asking.
I just said number 2. I'm saying the best thing for
walking
you to do is the one that you'll actually do.
The one that you'll actually do. Okay,
that's the one.
You set me up there.
Okay, I did. She had that. If you only saw the look in her eyes, I thought she was going below the belt again. Anyway, R. We were told not to go below the belt by your husband today.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. R. What are we looking for with R?
He knows I won't follow that though. Relax.
Yeah.
Nourish, move, relax.
I would say in the Western world, probably one of the weakest points. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe not of course, not across the board, but active relaxation and sleep.
Yes, sleep is in this category, which if there's one thing you do first, I honestly think it might be sleep.
Yeah. Did you read the book, Why We Sleep?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I listened to it, audiobook. But I felt silly having listened to it, how I didn't understand the gravity of how important it was. I knew it's important. Come on, it's part of our core foundations. But when you really get into it, my God, it's free. It's passive. Mm-hmm. In a way, you don't have to try too hard necessarily. You should facilitate it more than try hard. It's implicated in so many brain issues, mental issues. So it's so easy, right?
It's great.
Tell that to my grandma. She can't sleep very well.
Yeah, it's easy until it's not, and then it's very frustrating.
But it's just nice in that way, right? You're not buying a supplement. You're not having to do some crazy diet. But it's literally sleeping can save your life, or prolong your health span at least.
Yes, definitely.
All right, I can leave the X to you. The NMRX. We're at X. This is the last of the foundations before we move on. So
yeah, X is X factor, and that came later. Because we were, and again, we're not, we've done other episodes on, actually, we haven't done an official episode on NMRX, I don't think. But yeah, X is X factor because we were seeing patients who were killing it in sleep and nourishment and exercise, but they were missing some sort of spark or purpose in their life.
Meaningful connections, purpose in the struggle, because there's some struggle usually, no matter who you are, seems to be. So, a bit of, I call sterile spirituality. Yes.
I'm designing some women's health programs right now, though I have to admit, I feel like for those programs, X is going to become triple X.
All right, Ryan, sorry.
Which again is spark, energy, right?
It's important.
Spark, connection.
Yes. It sort of fuels the other ones, right? Because it could be sort of doldrums, I eat well, I
here's my food
twice
diary.
a day.
Yes,
here's
exactly.
my diary. I'm going to bed at the right time. I drink enough, but I talk like this. Well, come on. Life is precious, and that's what X is there for. It's to spark the progress in those other areas.
And it fuels the purpose of the other. Why would you need to be healthy or eat well? The X is why you do it.
Yeah, the why.
And it motivates.
The why comes in. Mm-hmm. It fuels and motivates and directs that sort of those changes in the more sort of. I don't know. NMR are sort of more just core physiological things, but that X thing is what keeps them
lights it up
for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you're not getting better, just hang out at the foundations.
And so sometimes people will just get better on foundations, right? You've probably seen it
many times.
Yeah, many. I would say, although we see probably more difficult cases as you get older, a better practitioner or something, it sort of happens like that. But if everyone just did the foundations, I think there'd be a lot fewer problems.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's next?
Assessment.
Yeah. So
what's wrong?
What is wrong? Because everything after this hinges on the right assessment. If you're treating the wrong thing, you're not going to get better.
Yeah, exactly. So you've done you're doing all the basic stuff right. You've done your NMRX, and still there's still a problem. Then that's when you have to go, okay, maybe I have to talk to someone who actually knows the language of problems better, which is and we'll talk about this, but later a little bit. But like you and I have different areas of expertise, even within our same profession. So, and I'm sort of giving away the end again, but that's okay. It ties it all together. Oh, no? Okay.
I would say for the first thing too about assessment is, actually, this is not even assessment. If you know there's a problem, there's a problem. Don't ever be told that there's no problem.
That's a good point. And we didn't talk about that. But it's a really good point. It goes along with that, like dismissive stuff that can happen. Like, oh, that's just normal. We talked about this on our last recorded podcast with, was that on Metrescence? That was, it's like, oh, it's just normal to be tired and shitty when you're a new mom. No, I mean, it's not optimal. Maybe more likely it happens a lot more, but is that sort of what you're getting at a little bit? Like not being dismissed, like your problem's not a problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the assessment also hinges on asking the right questions.
What do you mean if you don't know you have a problem?
No, if you know you have a problem.
Like as a patient?
Yeah. I guess I'm more coming at this from the practitioner's point of view. If from the patient's point of view, it's a problem if you don't know who to ask to get the right answers. That's what I'm saying. Like, how do you know who's going to give you the best assessment, or who's going to be able to dig in deep enough or with the right expertise in which to find what the problem is?
I would argue in a perfect world, you're seeing your naturopath equally or like at the same sort of point of contact as your medical doctor, if it's not an acute emergent need, because of what I said earlier. Because if it's not our, like when it's women's health or hormone health, you're going to it inside out. So that's going to be, they're already in the right hands with you. But if it's something else, say it's a gut problem, but they know you because you have a great Instagram presence or something, you might say, okay, well, yeah, cool. But I think, you might be better off to see Dave for this particular thing because that is more the language that I speak.
Yeah, that happens every day.
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, so knowing what the problem is, okay, so we talked about, or I said, also, if you don't have the right sort of idea of what the problem is, then you don't really have a direction of where to go next with your treatment. Yeah,
you're flailing.
Totally. You're throwing everything. Is this where you fit in being on 100 supplements? Is this where we fit it in?
I think, assessment, I think it is, you need to work with someone who can take all the data and make some good hypotheses. We're not always right.
Yeah, that's key.
We're making a good hypothesis about the most likely reason why, or it's never one, first of all, but we're making some good hypothesis based on collecting very good, thorough data. We make a hypothesis and say, let's test it.
Which depends on knowing your therapy. We talked about this, right? Because now we're getting to that point where it's like, okay, we tried. So when you say you try, pick one of your favorites. What are one of your favorites for a common condition?
Oh, fuck, I don't know. Excuse me.
Dropping F-bombs.
It's the end of a really long week.
I know. Okay. What I'm saying is you know your therapies well. So when you know the problem fairly well and you know the therapy fairly well, a positive result is great. We feel great. The patient is happy. We pat ourselves on the back and move on to bigger and better and harder things probably. But also if the result is not what we want, it's still good data.
Exactly. It still tells us something.
Point. Yeah. So when you have one of your, that's what I was going to say, pick one of your, favorites. Gotcha. Give them away. Give one away, Kara.
Okay, ginger for painful periods.
Okay, so you give your ginger for painful periods and it doesn't work. What does that tell you maybe is going on?
Maybe there's something structural. Maybe there's a fibroid. Maybe the hormones are really off balance. Maybe it's just so heavy it's going to be pain. There's a billion reasons why.
But what is it? What it still gives you? It still gives you some good information, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Which informs your next choice, and you've sort of removed one thing from the picture to it clarifies it in a way. Whereas if you threw like everything at it and nothing worked, you don't know.
Exactly.
What worked. Okay.
Not the best example because that's kind of a short-term.
I just threw it at you.
Short-term quick hit. But that's what I do while we're figuring out some other things, right? It's like, let's try to get the pain down while we're figuring it out.
Yeah. And it tells you the gravity of things sometimes, right? If
Sure.
maybe okay, it is for sure this, but it's just, that's not a strong enough intervention for the severity of what you're dealing with.
Exactly. So we've made a hypothesis. We've done a good assessment. We say, okay, here are the problems. Here are the systems that are affected. Then we go into choosing a therapy, or the patient does. Maybe that makes the patient go into their health food store and say, I think I have gout. Mm-hmm. What do you have for gout? Or let's ask my uncle. Uncle Bob used to have gout. Let's see what he did.
Yeah. Allopurinol.
Yeah.
But this isn't just unique to naturopaths. I'm just thinking like other practitioners will be doing this. They'll be going, someone's come to them because they're not feeling better. Yep. They'll be like, do your core workout. Did you do your core workout? And I think it's your core. And then, okay, then it's also this. So I think all practitioners go through this, but
definitely.
Yeah. So you go, and I like the health food store example, because you're just sort of going and maybe not getting a full assessment, right? You might find something that works, which is great. All power to you, and that's great. But if you just sort of went in and bought a whole bunch of supplements whimsically on your way home because you thought you had to do something, then you may have this problem that we're getting here to, which is, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, so what are the cases? Why are some reasons why a therapy might not work? Let's go over some reasons why we've picked a therapy. We think we know what the problem is. What are some of the reasons why the therapy might not work?
Well, do we go back and say the assessment was off?
Yes, for sure.
So that's why Kara put these in order, which is great. Thank you. The assessment could be off. So the intervention, which is dependent on the assessment to a large degree, unless it's foundational and generalized, like health promoting. Yep. Then you're just off that way, and it makes you go, okay, is that, especially if it's a kind of treatment that is quite reliable. Mm-hmm. What else?
We'll do 3 first here from our list. It just might be that that either the practitioner, we've been guilty of this probably younger in our career, or you are just throwing the kitchen sink at it. Like all the things that might work for joint pain.
Yeah.
Right? That you're just throwing everything at it. It's a red flag if you're leaving any office of any description with like 5 or 10 medications or supplements or crazy diets or whatever the brand of treatment is.
Yeah. 5 is, maybe 5 is okay. But probably not the first, I don't know, probably not the first visit. I don't know. Maybe we might get some slack from people, but I kind of have to agree with you. Mm-hmm. It's usually 3 or fewer.
Well, and we can get into specifics when we go into monitoring. The other reason, just to finish out how you might know why something might be the wrong therapy. So we've said 1, we're treating the wrong problem. 2, you're just throwing the kitchen sink, or like kind of a crazy, like all-in approach of just flailing in the wind, just doing everything. It's too much, is maybe overwhelming, or you're not giving one thing a chance to work, or why else is too much not good? You're overwhelming the system. Yeah, I mean,
I'll just think from my gut perspective, I've seen people, I think you referred a patient to me, and she's just on so much stuff from a previous practitioner and she has a gut problem. And where do you throw all the supplements?
Yeah.
In the gut.
Exactly.
And so now she's got like a overtaxed sort of system, like digesting 10 different supplements 3 times a day. You got to think about that.
Yes. So it's too much, but it's also, it could be the right things, but in the wrong order.
Yeah.
And then the one I see too is that perhaps you have to match the therapy to the intensity of the problem.
So give an example what we were sort of talking about before.
Yeah, so I was talking to a patient today actually, and she was like, "Well, how do we know what we choose?" This was for a menopause transition and all the hormone changes and symptoms that can go with that. And she's like, "Well, how do we choose?" Because I gave her some options of what it might look like going forward, and I said, "Well, there's a lot of ways to consider it. But if you were, if I have a patient talking to me who's, let's say, having night sweats, changing the sheets 3 times a night, like covers on and off, literally like sleeping an hour, we can't throw peppermint oil on her neck and think that that's going to be helpful. And so the therapy has to match the intensity or the severity of what you're going through and how quickly you need to elicit change. So in that woman, I would do bioidentical hormone therapy like that. She's the first one to say, Kara, give me the hormones, right? Whereas someone who's just like having very gracefully, seeing some changes and, maybe we can use some herbs or maybe we, can cut out or reduce sugar intake and reduce stress. You have to match the intensity to the problem.
Yeah, well, look, if you don't match that intensity fairly quickly, we're off on the first step is off, right? Which was foundations. And in your case, you're not sleeping if you're sweating through your sheets like throughout the night. Like, so we're already off on the wrong foot. Just going back to what we talked about as foundations. So that's when it's good to not be like fundamentalist naturopath. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Of course you do.
And it actually that lends to just going back to order. I have lots of patients who are not in the place. It's funny because we said foundations are first, but sometimes you need to get a little help before those people can do the changes. Right. So you might be sitting at home knowing I need to make huge changes in my health. I'm not happy, but you can't get there because maybe you don't have the energy, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe your mood is so low you can't contemplate the changes. Mm-hmm. So sometimes there's some pre-steps before the foundations, and that's where knowing the order of the therapeutics is almost as important as what the therapies are. Totally.
Yeah, like there's a place for catalyzing these. I think you talked some nerdy stuff. Was it a couple times ago, a couple of podcasts ago?
I did. I got slammed down, but I have an Instagram post ready to go with the with the chemical equation of activation energy. Which the
nerds will get it. But basically, what Kara is talking about is trying to make that transformation from one thing to another require less energy so that it actually gets there. Otherwise you just sputter and start and never get there. So it's sort of like ironic that you use something like a bioidentical hormone to get to the foundation and then you build from there. And hopefully maybe you don't need once you I don't know, this is your jam more than mine, but maybe once you give the hormone and then the sleep comes and the foundations are all sort of getting it, maybe they need it less. Is that a possibility, or is that just sort of stay like that?
Possibly.
Yeah. In an ideal situation.
Possibly. I don't think it's ideal because in the long run, their brain and heart and bone health is gonna, right? Because that's actually a different scenario because you're always hedging a couple different streams, right? It's like, how do we get you feeling better acutely? And then, maybe for those women who are trying to prevent osteoporosis or Alzheimer's, maybe that's a good longer strategy. So those are different considerations that we're always weighing, is the short term and long term as well.
I always learn something from you about women's health and hormones. So yeah, that is, does that sort of clarify making sure you have the right therapy and knowing that the wrong therapy is just going to take you down the wrong path?
Yeah, I think that's good because if we go to 5, which is monitoring progress, like I can't say strongly enough, do not do something if you don't know it's working. Like how often do you ask a patient, oh, is that helping you? I don't know. I was told to take it and I've been taking it for 5 years. Yeah,
well, that's that one that we were talking about earlier. She's on like all those supplements, just doesn't want to stop taking them when clearly she's not entirely well because she's still coming and seeking more help. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's one of those cases. So you could almost start that off till before that, saying like monitoring progress is easier when you have like a symptom or problem that you yourself can like monitor or see. we talk about how it's maybe easier for me sometimes working with bowels because you get input or feedback data every day, hopefully, and if you don't, every week or something. But at least you're getting like feedback. You're like, if you don't have bowel movements for days, you don't have to wait a month. Whereas
Exactly.
in your case, sometimes you're waiting to monitor that progress, the feedback.
28 days.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right? Or 7 days in some, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Or 56.
so there's extremes that way. So when it's easier to monitor progress, we don't need to beat that one to death. But there are other things like, what about when you're monitoring someone's hormone levels or something? Like they may not feel crazy. Does this happen where they don't feel like crazy different, but you get their hormones? You're like, this is great. This is improvement. This is decreased. Does that sort of happen? Or is it always correlated with symptoms?
They're pretty correlated.
Yeah.
I can pretty much look at an estrogen level and guess how much better their symptoms are.
Right.
But that's
But labs would be another way of monitoring progress, right?
Yeah.
Maybe for fertility, would it be another way? Is there another? Because you don't really fertility. Do you see like? Are you having symptoms, or are you just sort of looking to get the hormone levels where they need to be? Do you heavily rely on the lab aspect?
Less so for fertility.
Okay.
Yeah. Or like we could take something more. I mean,
give me a good example here. You know what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to say sometimes a different perspective other than signs and symptoms might be helpful.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we monitor? I guess that's a good question. Or even people at home that are trying to solve their health without a practitioner. How do you monitor if things are changing? Because sometimes we don't remember. And I see that too, right? Well,
that's the bias with our brain, right? We have a bias towards seeing pain and negativity. Yeah, and you see it all the time, right? People, they're like, good thing you take good notes sometimes because people come back, you're like, and how's this? They're like,
oh, it's okay.
Oh.
Yeah, it might be a bit better.
Or they say, I forgot about it.
Yes.
They think it basically, you took care of a major symptom or sign and it's out of their brain, so they don't even remember it getting better. So that can be.
I'll go back to the chart. I'm like, let me read this to you from 3 months ago.
Yeah.
This is what your period looked like. Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. How easily we forget when bad things go away. Yeah. So there's that. Just from my perspective, I feel things in people's bodies and tissue, when things are tight in this area or that area. So that's a way of monitoring progress. And I'm sure more manual focused therapists would have lots of wisdom that way too, that they just get from feeling tissues and stuff like that. I like
so feeling like what you can feel, and a physio or chiro would really be able to feel those changes.
So, an osteo, we can't leave them out.
And an osteopath. So physical changes, lab changes, signs and symptoms. The one I like too is what would your family say?
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. Like, well, my husband says, I hear this, my husband says he's seeing changes. I think I'm seeing some, but my family says they're seeing that I'm improving.
Or if your entire family changes around you and you're like, oh, maybe you just being in a better state of health had something to do with the environment of the home.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. I think it was, I think my kids were having a stressful time. And the only thing I changed was something about my health or something, my outlook or mindset. And all of a sudden they just, they just changed. So the progress is, there's many facets. It's just as holistic as the problem is the outcomes. And you can't always predict what the outcomes are either.
And some of the core, like some of the real basic things can change. Like even something just like, oh, my energy is better. Or I'm sleeping better, even though you didn't like actively treat sleep. You didn't go, I'm treating your sleep. You just did something like your diet improvement or whatever, and you're sleeping better, some stress reduction, and you're sleeping better. So the basics like hunger, sleep, weight, or like puffiness.
Those are good barometers. Yeah, that's a great point.
They're simple, but energy is one that people love, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of time energy doesn't come in some little packet. It's not some external thing you ingest and now you have more energy. It's more like get out of your own way by getting, supporting the foundations and all the stuff we already talked about, like treating the right thing, and then, oh, poof, there's more energy.
Those are, I think that's I hope people are listening. That's a great point, because those systems are so, like, when you get out of the way, those basic systems they're trying to find their way back. So your body's trying to sleep well.
Yeah.
It should have energy. You should be able to get up in the morning with lots of energy and be excited to face the day. Sex drive would be another one, right? Like those systems, but it's true, right?
No,
like
true.
Those basic, like,
no, it is true. And
primates and things, as you say, are really good barometers of your health.
And that's why it's important that I think if you're going to be a good doctor of anything, you don't only need to know sickness.
Yes.
You need to know health.
Yeah.
And I hope people are listening to that too, because if you want to know progress, you don't just look for like an absence of some tumor or like a lab test being totally whack. Look for an absence of joy, look for an absence of energy, look for an absence of sleep. These are so key. So to know sickness, you have to know health. And I think to know health, you have to know sickness too. It's got to know both. And again, toot our own naturopathic horn about that one, because we try to create health. But
I'm excited because I think we just learned something from ourselves.
What did we do?
I mean, those are things that we do. Like, those are goals and those are outcomes that I ask at every visit.
Yeah.
But I think I didn't. I'm going to just be more conscious of that now. I think I've taken that for granted.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're just used to getting good results, Kara?
I don't know. Not always, but often. I think.
What about your exit plan? That's one thing you wrote on there too. It was like monitoring progress includes knowing when. And I just did this with someone today. We have a stepwise. So first, okay, I educated her in terms of what are the expected influences of the interventions that we're doing, and how they relate to her symptoms, so that she knows that when she takes one away, and if one of those symptoms sort of regresses, then she knows, okay, we're not ready to pull that one out yet, but we are going to take something. I'll let you reframe it, but this is just the example from today. So I said, here's what they do. Here's the expected benefit, because like you said at the beginning, we don't know 100%, but we have probable ideas of what's helping what. So then I said, take away one at a time and see if you can have a bit of a drug holiday from it. And if you take it away and symptoms regress, then you go back on it.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a key point too, that when you are going to do any therapy, I mean, this is legally required of us, whether or not we as practitioners are good at it or not, is we are required to say, here's the therapy. This is what it does. Here's the potential side effects. Here's the potential benefits. Mm-hmm. This is what you will notice if it's working. This is how you will know it's not working. And here is the exit plan. And
it's part of consent.
It's informed consent. Yeah. And whether that is a drug from your doctor, or that is an exercise program from your physio, or that is a supplement or hormone or whatever from us, you as a patient or a consumer, it's your health and you have the right to know and be informed as to what to expect. And I love the question, what is the exit plan? Because I think that's where a lot of problems happen is you'll get here's this drug, it will treat this, but it's like, well, what should I expect? What are the side effects? What if, like, how long do I have to take this? Am I taking this the rest of my life? And, when we get lists of therapies that people are on, it's like, well, why are you taking that? Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Is it helping? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, those are problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I wasn't as good at this as I am now. Maybe it's because we got more used to the therapies that we're using and probably stopped using as many and got smarter with the ones that we do. But I see a lot of people come from other types of interventions and it's like that. And it's now you've got more problems then, right? Because you can't tell people to take away those therapies if you didn't intervene. But now you've got a problem of not only were they we're not sure of the problem. We're not sure if the therapy helped, but now you're on this therapy.
Yeah.
And it's probably got some side effects if we're talking about pharmaceuticals.
Yes. And before we get to our last point, just one more point about therapies in general. I think it's good to specify the difference between, we talk about foundations, but foundational supplements or foundational nutrients versus therapeutic. So there are some nutrients that might be more longer term for health, like the most obvious example is vitamin D. Mm-hmm. So those are things that you can't reliably get in the diet that are more likely to be deficient, like a vegan taking iron or B12.
Right.
So there's some foundations that are, you might not know there's going to be a change, but we've assessed that it's probably a deficiency and you're going to need to supplement it.
Do you mean like where they might not have symptoms that would tell them that there's a problem?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They might, but not always.
Yeah. And what else? And I think the nature of the intervention is, we talked about this earlier too. Is this time for that? Yeah, I think this is time for that. Mm-hmm. So where it's like, when I do visceral manipulation, usually right away there's some observable effect. During the treatment, end of the treatment, that's on the table. That makes that therapy kind of nice that way, because you can notice that. We had a bit of a jab at fish oils because we love them, but if you go from not taking fish oils to taking fish oils for one day, I don't think you're going to see a resolution of long-term chronic inflammation.
Yeah, and that's where I hear my patients will say, "Oh, I heard fish oil is good," or they'll say, "I saw your post on fish oil. I just went out and bought a fish oil and decided to take it." And you wouldn't just go buy a medication. Like supplementation is complex and intricate and personalized, and
intricate.
I'm gonna swear again at you. I get overwhelmed in the stuff. Like if I'm looking through a catalog of supplements or at the supplement store, it is overwhelming to me. And I have 3 degrees in nutrition. I know how to read a supplement label, and it overwhelms me. So if you're literally just going out, I can guarantee if you're going out and picking your own supplements, they're not the right ones and you're wasting your money.
You might have got lucky.
You can get lucky. Yeah. And definitely what I'm seeing now of what people are picking out on their own has greatly improved over time, because there's a higher degree of knowledge.
I'd agree with that.
But if you're going to invest in them, just bounce it off someone who can help you to pick the right ones.
Yeah. And again, it just goes back to the whole order of things we talked about. Get the foundations first before you look for some targeted Brazilian superfruit.
Yes.
Yeah. Pick on acai again.
Yeah.
So monitoring progress. I think we've done all right with that one. And when we said when to exit, it's like, I guess the idea is minimalist approach in terms of you don't need to be on 1 million supplements if you don't need to be on 1 million supplements.
No.
Right. So
yeah, my goal is to have an exit. My goal is to get the body to do it on its own. Maybe it's like melatonin. It's like, hey, let's try this. You've been stressed. Your whole cycle is knocked off. Mm-hmm. You're working late on your computer at night. Let's just reset this pattern. Your body knows how to do this. Let's reset it and get you sleeping. And your body probably can take over from there if you invest in the sleep hygiene and all the things you need to do. Mm-hmm. Same with menstrual cycles. My goal is get in and out in 3 or 4 cycles. Get the cycle. Your body knows how to do it, right? Get out of its way, right? And then I don't want you to have to take the herbs or whatever for all 450 cycles you'll have in your lifetime. Yeah. It's like, let's get in, let's fix the problem, let's show your body, remind it how to do it, and get out of the way.
Cool. I like that. I think that is a good way to end the monitoring progress. Let's go to implementation. And what we're saying here is, if there's so you say we've assessed, so we did the foundations and then we assessed properly. You've seen me or Kara or someone else, and then, okay, so the assessment's pretty good. We sort of know what's going on. maybe it's a physio and they have great palpation skills and they know it's like the medial meniscus and that's why you have a knee issue or whatever. Okay, then they do the therapy. Okay, so this is when it's more difficult for lifestyle medicine and naturopathic medicine because the treatment doesn't end when you leave the clinic.
Yes.
So you find yourself maybe not doing it for some reason. So it's the right stuff. It's probably the right dose. It probably matches the severity of the condition, but you're not doing it.
You got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the reasons maybe why the person is not doing it?
So the treatment suggestion is just not feasible in their life.
Yeah. Whether
it's financially or energetically or fits in with their schedule or life circumstance.
That's key. Mm-hmm. Life, if they have 4 kids, it's very different than being alone. If if it's if you're a shift worker, there's certain things one of the foundations is going to be buggered right away, right? So if you're like, you have to go to bed at 9:30 p.m. No, sorry, mate. That's me at work, so that sounds very obvious, I know, but it's just to make a point that the implementation has to suit the person. And this is, again, not something you generally learn in school. It's just...
That's the art and the skill of the practitioner and the creativity too, right? Like I might have a patient who I know probably should not eat gluten, let's say.
Right.
Or should eat we need a certain type of therapeutic diet. But I'm not going to give them that diet if their life right now is just not capable of creating that change. So
the environment for them to create that change isn't great. What would be some example? You probably have some from your life.
Sure. There's I know I do better when I don't eat gluten, but what happens when my clinic's busy and the kids have, like Ryan and the 2 kids have soccer 3 nights a week in the summer and you're just running back and forth and
something's got to give.
Something's got to give.
Yeah. And if something's got to give more than it holds, then maybe the plan just needs to be shifted a little bit.
Yeah. Or sometimes life has to. Sometimes you have to shift life in order to make the changes you need for your health. But that's the art of it. That's figuring that out. Other
implementation problems, maybe unsupportive husband or something like that. The one who thinks whatever you're doing is whack or whatever. You need that. That's not, again, it's probably the right sort of idea, but given those circumstances, maybe you need to do a little bit of a pivot or a shift.
Yep. Or the problem is not severe enough. Right? The pain.
Expand a bit.
Maybe you're not doing it because the gains are not as bad as the pain.
Yeah. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another reason too. And then I never thought about that, but that's a good one. Is the pain point enough to necessitate the implementation pain in the wazoo? Or
you don't see the risk of not doing it. It's not apparent why, and that's okay. You'll get there.
Yeah. Cool. Is this the end now?
It's the end. What happens when we know as practitioners, or as a patient, that we're stuck?
So we're almost back. So we've gone through all these stages, and now we're sort of back to what we started at the beginning, which is probably just not getting better, even though we're trying fairly, reliable sort of ways of going about it.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say that to patients. I'm like, we're missing something. There's something, X, Y, and Z have gotten better. We know almost always they're in a somewhat of a better position, but there's one thing that's niggly or a couple things that we just can't, we're just not getting the movement on that we need.
So then what do we do? Okay, so let's think of it. I'll think of another example before we go down that. Really, that's a simple example where I would go down to if I know you have your foundations all right, and I the assessment is maybe rough in terms of the fact that it's not maybe my forte. I know there's hormones that are sort of driving the bus here. The problem is, if not primarily driven by hormones, and this is one of the ways we refer all the time, right? I'll say, this is just not my area of expertise, and they are sent to you or someone else. I mean, look, for us, it's you. I'd send to you. And which is great now with telehealth. You can get referrals from all over Ontario now because you're doing so much of the virtual stuff for women's health, which is awesome. So there's like a little bit of maybe a silver lining to all this, but
there are some.
Yeah. But basically what I'm saying is I already know enough to know that I don't know enough, and they're coming to you. I'm not going to see them because I'm like hoarding the patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, you skip a few steps to get there that way. But the other more obvious way maybe is when you've done your best, you've maybe reevaluated the problem. Because sometimes you got to go back to the drawing board and go, what did I miss? Like you were saying.
Yes.
And then you go, well, I think it might be time for you to see someone else.
Mm-hmm. And
I think the funniest thing, I think this is one of the funniest thing, which I guess I realized a while ago, is the more I know, the more I refer out.
Every time. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
And the earlier I refer now. I mean, so it goes in the other direction too. So, and I mean, these examples could be anything. It could be, I know when I need to refer to a chiro, or I know when something is more, requires some counseling, right? Like, so we're using our personal examples, but it could be any direction of different types of practitioners. But I might know that I'm working with a patient, and a huge component of it is their gut. I mean, for the first part, they might have just been sent to you anyway when they call the clinic. But I think when we can start to coordinate care a little bit better, why wait till the end of that cycle or 2 or 3 versions of that cycle instead of saying, you know what, I'm a naturopath. I know guts. I have some good foundations in treating gut problems, and I probably could do a very good job. But why don't we just see what Dr. Dave has to say and just make sure, let's just get the best assessment and the best plan right off the bat, and then this is while we're working on all of this other stuff.
You know what a couple of things come to mind is low-hanging fruit and easy win.
Yeah.
Right. If you got an easy win, like if I see someone, sure, they probably have some gut issues, but guts, the more you know about the depth of some things, it's not always as simple. But there's some gut issues, but it's like every period of mine, I'm going through 10 super tampons for 4 days. It's like, go to Cara. That's it. Like, you have to start there. That's low-hanging fruit. That is like the most obvious first thing to do, right? And you might touch on the gut a tiny little bit, but you have got to do the easy wins. And from a perspective of patient care, an easy win really keeps you like motivated to keep trying.
Yeah. And I think from a patient perspective, I've always wondered because, you wonder if as they're getting that referral, they're like, oh, well, she doesn't know how to solve it. I don't think that, but I'm just trying to think of it from the patient point of view. If you're seeing a practitioner who's referring you to somebody else, that's actually it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a very good sign in most cases.
I didn't know how to say that without, I think you put it nicely, but I would say in a more like blunt terms, if you're a practitioner, doesn't refer out after repeated efforts to like meet some treatment goal that are lasting more than a day or two. And I won't even say the example that I'm thinking of, but I think of it all the time. If it's like every week you go to the same person for the same thing, it gets better for a day, but that sort of example, I think you are within reason to start to think, maybe I should just try a different approach. And it's no offense to the person. I am so willing to refer out because I don't know. I think I'm getting a better handle what we're good at and what other people are really, really skilled at. I think I'd be worried if someone doesn't refer out, is I guess what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Didn't get into too much trouble there?
Nope.
No? Okay, she's smiling. Maybe I did, but...
I have a different threshold for trouble. You do too, so I don't know. I don't know at this point.
Yeah, so I think the better you get, the more you know when to refer out and not sort of like die on your sword. I'm a naturopath. I treat everything. I have to be the one to do. No, you got to think about the patient first.
And same from patient perspective. Do not fear insulting any practitioner by finding different answers.
Ooh, I like it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can take that one. I know you can take it when people say it, but usually we beat them to that.
Yeah,
it's usually us that like, I got a pretty high standard for what I'm trying to do here. If we don't see something moving like pretty quick, and that comes back to some of the stuff we talked about, like how to monitor progress. Are we going in the right direction? Did we do a good assessment? Like, yeah, you get a better idea of when to know that you're sort of out of your league, or someone just might have a better perspective.
And I think that's an important, like, how do you know what other perspectives to consider? And maybe think of different people who can offer different lenses, right? So, I mean, a naturopath, we look at things from lots of angles, but perhaps it requires more of a structural lens. Like maybe it requires, maybe their menstrual cramps have nothing to do with their lady bits. Maybe there's some major pelvic blood flow issues that an osteopath could get that pelvis moving, or maybe it requires a pelvic physio. So some streams of thought of different lenses would be of a more kind of physical structural lens. Might be a more mental emotional lens, whether that is a counselor or some energetic therapies or spiritual therapy, like spiritual lenses. Things
especially
like that.
If they're into that, right? That's when it's like you got to listen to the patient. What are you into? You gotta.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll give one example of this because you sent me a patient, and this is a good example of knowing enough to know that someone else might know more.
Yeah.
And this was a patient who, in a certain position, when her body's in a certain position, she gets a repeated feeling in a consistent area of the body, and it was body position dependent, and body anatomy, sort of like she knew where in the body she feels it. And you were smart enough to go, you know what, that sounds like a structural perspective might be useful in this case. And I think you're right. But that's a good example of it. Yeah,
like throwing a new diet or herb at it is not going to, when it's that obviously structural.
Yeah. So good for you. I that's just a good example of knowing knowing enough to know that you don't know enough, but still you have that perspective that you know exists. Yeah.
Or no, you probably have enough, but someone has way more than enough. So why not, in the patient's best interest, go there?
Exactly.
And if you're a patient listening, then always go to the person that you think, get all the opinions, and I know there's some barriers to that too, but never not seek other opinions for fear of,
cheating on your practitioner.
Yeah. Cheating. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Does that tie it all together?
It's good for me from my perspective it took us 5 minutes on the whiteboard to write those 6 steps, but I hope that gives some people who are just listening, who are struggling with their health or haven't found answers, maybe 1 or 2 light bulbs of some things where it may have gone wrong. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's good. We could do a podcast again ourselves anytime, because I think we did all right.
Yeah, not bad for winging it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening. And like Kara said, I hope you got 1 or 2 light bulbs go off, and you maybe get some new perspective on what to do when you're not getting better.
Yep. See you again.
Okay. Bye.
Over and out.